Hello, so this is another interview for the Protective Volunteer YouTube channel, and today we're going to talk to Jackie, who is an American here who trains the Third Assault Brigade. And so we've got a lot of questions for him. But first of all, do you want to just introduce yourself and what's your background before
Yeah,
you train?
sure. So call signs Jackie. I'm originally from Orange County, California. I was U.S. Army for 8 years, cavalry scout, pretty motivated guy. I was a Bradley Master gunner. Had my own advanced shooting school in Kuwait, 4 deployments. So 8 years in, deployment is 1 year for our U.S. Army, and so 4 out of my 8 years were deployed overseas. Of course, Iraq and Afghanistan, and so have plenty of experience. And then even after the military, I stayed. I would say military adjacent, teaching a lot of other disciplines, including at the JFK Special Warfare Center, helping, not instructing, but helping our new special operators prepare for their careers. So
Yes, you're coming into this with tons of experience.
yeah, yeah.
Now that you've been here about 2.5 years now.
Mhm.
Do you feel like your prior career and prior experience actually prepared you for being in Ukraine?
It definitely prepared me. It definitely prepared me. So if you're coming in here like new, let's say without a lot of experience, I mean, the way that the military affairs are conducted in Eastern Europe in general, it's just completely different from what we see in the West. And in a lot of ways, it's good, but in a lot of ways, it's not good. And so the having that experience basically allowed me to like quickly see what was new, and then be able to parse out what kind of should be changed, and what we could keep doing, what was sustainable and what wasn't sustainable. And has been, I would say it's been a key factor in like my survival in this conflict so far. So
Yeah, so speaking of that, like I said, you came here quite a long time ago, almost 2.5 years, kind of right at the start of it. What made you come over?
yeah, so at the time I was working, like I said, at the time I was working at with our special operators, and I was already surrounded by that culture, especially the particular unit I was working with. Their job is to integrate with foreign militaries. That was all the subject matter we were helping teach, and so I was already consumed basically in my life with that professionally, going to help foreign entities. And then this war kicks off in Ukraine. I actually didn't know a lot about Ukraine before deciding to come over here. I just knew that in the first week watching it on TV that everybody said that Ukraine was done. This was over.
Yeah.
And I definitely paid attention to Russia's invasion of Georgia previously, and I thought, okay, similar. It's going to be a similar story.
Yeah.
They're done. But then we saw the Ukrainians day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 fighting back, and oftentimes with nothing. They're fighting with tomatoes and just getting into crowds and facing down tanks. That's brave, right? That's extraordinary. That's not a normal reaction to an invasion like that. And so the bravery of the Ukrainians really inspired me, as well as they put out a very public call for Western volunteers, especially ones with military experience, to come and help them fight. And so they gave an open invitation for people like me to come and help Ukraine. So I wouldn't have come if I thought it was a bad cause. I wouldn't have come if I wasn't invited. And so I was invited, open invitation, not personally invited, but I went to the Ukrainian embassy, talked to them. Then I got my personal invitation to come and headed over here into the unknown.
And you arrived in the unknown.
Yeah.
What were some of those early days or early weeks like when you first arrived?
Yeah, they were. So the amount of mental power the Ukrainian leadership had to deal with every problem that they were dealing with was zero, right? And so, I mean, everybody at the lowest levels, everybody in Ukraine was just doing whatever they think they could do. There was a lot of initiative. I could see it from the military leaders. I could see it from civilians in Ukraine. Of course, if they're doing that, it has to come from us too. In the early days, there was plenty of shortages of equipment, shortages of ammunition, shortages of everything, shortages of information, shortages of housing, shortages of transportation, it's just shortage of everything. And you know, you could there were plenty of people who came here and were like, oh, this is a mess, this is super messed up, this is all wrong. And you know, I understood, you know, having experience I've had, I understood that of course it was going to be that way. You know, so I wasn't upset by any of the shortages, I wasn't upset by the lack of information, but there was definitely a big problem with shortages of especially information, especially the tools we needed to fight.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember, you know, talking to people in March 2022 and even figuring out, well, how do you even get into Ukraine and join the Legion or wherever you're like, that was confusing for everybody. And then no one knew what do you get issued when you get here? What happens? And
Yeah.
so super confusing time. So I know so you're a trainer now, but you were previously fighting. More. Can you say a bit about where you fought since you've been here?
Yeah, so I showed up in Kyiv, so we started with the push to get the Russians out of here. That's where ultimately I was wounded while I was here in Kyiv. And then, but after March, April, after I recovered from my wound, I partnered with a territorial defense unit, was teaching them, and then deployed with them later to Bakhmut, but not before rotating back into the International Legion 3rd Battalion and doing some fighting in Svatove, towards Svatove in the Kupiansk station in the Kupiansk area. But then, yeah, and then later with the territorial defense, went into Bakhmut. That was nuts. We were there basically for the last month and a half of the fight, while we're, you know, just trying to make the Russians pay for every inch until we finally got kicked out. And then since Bakhmut, I have not been too close to combat. I got a little close in Avdiivka, but I didn't go into the city, unfortunately. Well, probably fortunately. Well, anyway, our guys went in there and they were great. So now, after Bakhmut, I was recruited into the Third Assault Brigade as an instructor. And so my primary job has been teaching with the Third Assault Brigade since then.
What made you move from fighting to teaching here?
Well, I've always wanted to kind of do both. So I definitely came in with the mindset that I would eventually get into a training position, but I didn't want to do it before I had fought here, you know. And I knew that the war here would be very different from global war on terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, and so I really wanted to make sure that if I, you know, I'm a decent instructor, and so I knew I would be doing that eventually. Yeah. But I wanted to make sure that I knew what the guys were going through, what the Ukrainian soldiers were going through in this fight, and how it was to fight the Russians. And you know, I don't think you can't really read the reports on that. I mean, there's so much that gets turned around when people bring information back from their conflicts for various reasons, from their fights for various reasons. And so had to experience it firsthand. And then, you know, if you're an instructor and you haven't been through the fight, then you don't have a lot of legitimacy for your students. So that's the other thing is, like, you know, that's the facts of the world that I live, that my profession, which is that, like, if you haven't fought, especially like if you haven't fought at all, you should be teaching and fighting. And if you haven't fought in this particular theater, there's a big question about your qualifications to teach others about it, to be honest.
So one thing is, I've heard from a lot of Americans, especially with military experience, who maybe don't want to fight here, or just maybe either physically no longer can, but say they want to come instruct. Do you think that their skills would still be helpful, given that they haven't fought in Ukraine?
Yeah, as long as the focus is on the basics. So if we're talking about like marksmanship, if you can apply that broadly to lots of different tactical situations that the Ukrainians are going to come up with, right? Yeah. So basically tactics, that's where you kind of need to back off as an instructor. But basics like marksmanship, basics like physical fitness, basics like leadership development, I would say that's actually sort of a basic that's really needed over here, especially junior leaders. And then at the higher level, if we have higher level guys, officers who can teach how staffs work, how organizations are managed, how to do administration for a unit, that's really good stuff as well. the thing that bothers me that I see sometimes from guys who haven't fought is specifically the tactics. Like this is how you should do a stack, or this is how you should do a formation in this environment. And it's like that one you should probably stay away from.
Yeah, I've seen that criticism definitely because this is a different type of conflict than you guys have been in previously. Before you mentioned that some things they're doing here work really well, actually. What are some of those?
The trench techniques that they've come up with for just the tactics for fighting in a trench that they utilize here, they're much better than what we've got going on in the American military for sure. I don't know about other Western militaries. I suspect probably like Polish tactics are probably like decent for trench warfare, maybe. But like for what the Americans or the Brits have ready to go that they train with every day, they're nothing compared to what the Ukrainians can do in a trench.
Yeah, it's been a very long time since the U.S. fought any kind of trench warfare.
Yeah.
What are some things that you think still need to improve that you've seen?
Okay, so there's
Tough question.
yeah, no, there's a lot. The biggest one is trust. So trust between units and trust between Ukrainian units, and that's the principle or foundational thing that needs to change. But the effect that you get from trust is sharing information.
Yeah.
And so the units that fight right now really don't like to tell each other what they're up to and coordinate operations with each other. And in a large scale conventional war, that's a big problem. Like it works if you're doing special operations stuff, okay, you need all this compartmentalization. That's great. But we're actually fighting this huge front line. We've got the smallest effective unit in battle is a brigade. It's a ton of people. And all those people need to know what's happening so that they can react in their small way quickly. And then the brigades between each other need to be able to react to each other's actions. And so that requires a ton of information sharing and a ton of coordination between groups, a ton of communication. And we really haven't figured that out. We still don't have that high level trust. And that's hard for any military. That's something we've really figured out really well in the American Army. Like, we're really good at it. But that's hard enough for any military, and it's definitely much harder knowing that the military culture here in Ukraine is already pre-positioned not to allow that. Basically the Soviet military tradition is you hide everything. You don't tell anybody anything. And so we really got to break out of that. That's one. And then the second thing, I lost it, but I know what it is, so we'll get there. When I think of the second thing, we'll get back.
Well, yeah, we'll come back to that. Why do you think it's so hard to build the trust here between different brigades?
I think it's just the military tradition, the Soviet military tradition. I think we're building the trust faster than, let's say, the Russian army, who recognizes that like they probably suck pretty bad, and they do. And so we're evolving much quicker than our opponent. But both us and our opponent come from the same military tradition, the USSR military tradition. So I think that's the big one.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to break too, because it's decades of experience to break that. I want to ask you more about the Third Assault Brigade, because that's a pretty famous one in Ukraine. Even people who don't follow the war a lot recognize that name. Why do you think the name gets such recognition?
So the only measure of performance for any Ukrainian unit, whether they're good or bad, is results on the battlefield. That's it. There's no other factor. And so our results on the battlefield are really good, especially ratiologically. So our ability to destroy Russian forces and our ability to not lose our forces in the process is really high. We can get away with massive operations. So when you talk about, there's a lot of cool units doing really cool work. Maybe we're taking some oil rig in the Black Sea, or maybe we're doing a raid into Belgorod, or maybe we're doing some scuba stuff across the Dnieper River. There's a lot of cool units that are doing a lot of cool things, but most of those units are in that special operations vein. They're really small, and if you're doing this really small operation, like it can have bigger effects than you want. But at the end of the day, there are like 200,000 Russians that we need to clear out of here, right? And so those small operations are not going to be able to mount up to the end state that we need, right? It's kind of like our house has this really high roof.
Mhm.
You know, we can get away, we can do so much operations, but then our floor is so low, you know. And so what Third Assault Brigade is we are the largest brigade in Ukraine for one, right? So
Mhm.
we're like the largest manpower brigade. And we have a really high, we're that part of that floor that's pulling that floor up, you know. We're a massive unit that can do huge operations and get away with a lot, right? And so it's much that's actually the kind of unit those are actually the kind of operations that are actually going to win this war,
Mhm.
right? Not information operations, not propaganda operations, just hard nose getting through the Russian forces and taking our stuff back and destroying all this Russian equipment.
So along those lines, in terms of the soldiers that you have from Ukraine, Ukraine is conscripting some soldiers, some are volunteering. Do you have more volunteers or more
Yeah, we
contract?
definitely have way more volunteers, and so that's something that a lot of people kind of point out when they talk about the Third Assault Brigade. They say, "Oh well, you have all the best soldiers, and that's why you're so good." And that's not why we're so good. I
Mhm.
mean, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Or do we have a strong organization with a good culture, or
Mhm.
first, and that's why strong people come to us,
Yeah.
or were we already full of strong people to begin with? Like that's
Mhm.
not how it works. We
Mhm.
have a strong organization, we have a strong culture, and we have a strong mandate to win this war. You know, any new Stromovic soldier at the Third Assault Brigade, if he's a rifleman, let's say a new rifleman, his authority does not end at the end of his barrel to retake Ukraine, right? His authority ends at the end of Ukraine, right? So
Mhm.
he's even our lowest level guy is thinking, what do I need to do to capture this land back and to win victory for
Mhm.
my country? And so his authority is not that gun. His authority is all of Ukraine, and it's a big difference between us or other good units that are operating in Ukraine and other bad units who are operating in Ukraine who believe that their authority is only their rifle, or their authority is only their platoon, or their authority
Mhm.
is only their brigade. You know, like we have brigade commanders who are sure that the boundaries of their authority is only their brigade.
Mhm.
That's how you make a losing brigade. So
Interesting. I want to ask you more now about training them because you're assigned to train for night assaults. Um, did you choose that role, or is that one that's been assigned to you?
that was assigned to
Yeah.
me
Mhm.
based on the experience I have. So I'm the brigade instructor for night assaults and urban operations, and that's basically just like where I have a lot of experience and background from my time in the U.S. Army to
Yeah.
bring to the Ukrainians, and that's been going really well for us actually. So just across the brigade, it's been doing really well.
So along those lines, I know that you're doing night assaults, but not everybody is equipped with NVGs.
Yeah.
Um, how do you work around? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I've heard it put a couple different ways, and basically what I started with, because this is sort of a technique that's a really specific question about tactics, right?
Yeah.
And I'll just say that you know, there's a model that was built for this fight for how to conduct night operations. It was built by the Wagner private
Yeah.
military company, actually. And what they would do is they would have like 5 to 12 guys who had all the night vision equipment, right?
Mhm.
And then they would assign 50 guys to them with nothing, right? So just
Mhm.
like just garbage, right? 40, 50 guys who are just trash to these Wagner guys, and then the super elite team. And then they would just send the trash around at night and wait to see who got shot and where from. And then those 10 guys or so, they would try and pick off
Mhm.
the Ukrainians as they were revealing themselves while they were just losing the 40, 50 guys.
Mhm.
When they ran out of the guys, they would just get more guys to keep it going again. And you know the in the full theater battle, you know, on both sides, you know, there was a lot of respect for Wagner,
Yeah.
and it continues in some ways, right? Especially for the tactics. And what I tried to do is completely dump. I tried to just dump that.
Mhm.
I thought that was a terrible idea. It can work for Wagner, who if they want to kill all their men,
Mhm.
like that's fine for them, but it can't work for us. And
Mhm.
so thinking about that, I tried to develop something where we still we usually only have 20 to 30% of our element has the night vision equipment to fight at full strength at night. And so what can we do to integrate the guys who have nothing with the guys who have stuff? And so not that we have 10 to 12 guys fighting. So, you know, we don't want 20% of our force at night to be able to fight. We still want 100% of our force to be able to fight at night. And so basically what's happened is what I teach is that the guys who don't have anything, first off, they get really cheap technology like phosphorescent tape or glow in the dark paint or something like that. So that goes on their guns so that they can aim basically. And so everybody can hit a target at night at a certain distance. It's like everybody can definitely hit a guy at about 20-30 meters at night. They may not be able to guarantee hits farther than that, but they can definitely suppress enemies for 100, 200 meters even, right? So that's for people who have no night vision equipment. They can do that. And so they'll be operating with guys with certain pieces of equipment during an operation, so that basically, let's say there's a guy with an NVG and he's got two guys with him who don't have anything. And so he'll be leading for checking for mines. He'll be engaging targets that he sees, and those other two guys with him, they're already ready to work off of him and just aim in the direction he's aiming to add to the fire. And so if this guy gets into a fight, who has night vision equipment, he's not fighting by himself. He's got two other guys still fighting with him, right? And those three are able to maneuver with each other and react to situations, and then close the gap. So the whole point at night is we want to close that distance to 0 meters and get into that fight at 0 meters. And if you don't have night vision equipment, you can fight at 0 meters at night, no problem, right? And so all it is that the whole unit is all working together. We're not sending guys to sacrifice them. They're working together. We're still doing fire and maneuver with each other. And you know, you can fight at night without anything as long as you got friends.
Somebody has to have it, basically.
Yeah, somebody needs it.
Yeah. So one question, I get this question every time we fundraise for NVGs is, why don't you all have them? What's stopping?
So it's expensive stuff. I don't believe the U.S. Army even has 100% NVG equipped, right? And so we definitely have 100% of our combat arms, so our infantry, our scouts, stuff like that. They're 100% equipped with NVGs, but not the whole U.S. Army, right? And so if that's not even the case for us, with the largest economy in the whole world, then it's not going to be we're definitely not going to achieve that here in Ukraine. Most of the night vision devices that the soldiers carry, they're purchased with their own income. That's a lot of the combat gear is purchased with their own income. So most of the NVGs we have, the soldier purchased it or their family purchased it for themselves, and it's actually going to be at a huge inflation of price too, usually double the price of what we could get in America, because the good devices, they're all restricted from export and things like this. And so there's and the fact that we're in a war, there's major inflation on all these devices. So we do receive, I don't know that I don't work at like the DoD level to see how many NVG devices that we're getting in completely. But I know we are getting them from the West, but they're not sending, you know, a whole army's worth of stuff.
Just not enough.
So some guy, I've seen it. I've seen the devices from the U.S. coming in, and they get to the guys, but it's a very small number relative to the size of the whole force. So.
And one thing is, you know, you can lose them on ops as well. Sometimes people come back and all their gear, they're alive, but their gear is no longer with them. There's
attrition. We lose a lot of soldiers, and we lose a lot of gear, and that's just because it's a hard fight.
And so for you're in a training role, and some of the soldiers you're losing are people that you've taught. How does it feel to actually then see them go out in the battlefield, and sometimes you don't see them again?
Yeah. So I just found out this morning I lost a really good friend, call sign Bachman, from Third Assault Brigade, and so I'll just have it. I just found out today, so I'll just do a moment of silence for this guy.
Sure.
yeah, in his case, he was one of our most experienced NCOs,
Yeah.
and he was a really brave guy, fearless guy, and an example for everyone around. You know, so we had him. I had him for a NCO development course. He was already a strong leader in his own right, and he learned a lot through the course. And he was one of those guys that he was actually pretty hard to teach, and that's what strong leaders are. Oftentimes.
Oh, no, they are. I teach in my day job, and some of the best students I've had are actually challenging ones.
So he was a real leader, basically, and yeah, it really sucks to lose students. I lose students every week.
Yeah.
Bachman in his case was a particularly good student. I'm long past the beginner stage of being an instructor, so I already know it's not like news to me that just because I taught somebody that they might lose their fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So most of my students win their fights, and I get lots of feedback from students all the time about the great work that we did for them and how our instruction helped them. The fact is that this fight is the Russians are coming in hard. They're trying to kill everybody they can, and they have a lot of stuff to do with. So we're gonna take losses sometimes. The goal with any instruction that we do, though, is not necessarily to increase our lethality against the Russians. Of course, that's like an effect of it, but you got to play offense defense. So any of the instruction that we do is trying to change that ratio. We want 10-1 in our fights. And eventually we want 100-1. I think it's possible. I think it's possible, especially for our brigade. I think it's possible we get to 101 plus in our combat. So that's what we're trying to do.
Along those lines, there's a common perception that the Russian military is just not competent, especially based on their early days of, their boasts that will take Kyiv in 3 days, and it's been 900 days and they haven't. Is that overall accurate, though? Are they a competent military?
So 1 Russian is not competent. 10 Russians are not competent. It's highly unlikely that 100 Russians are not competent. The problem is when you bump into the 10,000 plus range, that's what they're designed. That's the level of competency that they try to achieve, and they achieve it. They're competent with the large operations, and especially if you consider that even gathering those people, equipping them, and then getting them into the fight, if that many people, let's say, I think the number is somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 Russians lost in Bakhmut, right? So they've got to have 100,000 plus Russians for that fight. And I was there fighting with them, and if you consider that getting those people into the fight in the first place is a skill in itself, that's where the Russians are competent, right? However, I mean, people argue about it. My estimation, just listening and watching when I was there, my estimation was the Russians had 8-1 on us in Bakhmut, right? And the fact that I was standing, or I was I was fighting where I was fighting in Bakhmut, and I wasn't like immediately killed against 8-1. It's incompetent, right? Like any reasonable commander of that fight, if they were in charge of the Russian side, they should have ejected us from there long before they did. You know what I mean? So it's a really hard argument to say, are they not competent? I mean, militarily, like by that operation that I was watching, I was so incompetent, right? Like it's hilariously bad, as from a military perspective. But then from like the sort of like logistics industrial perspective, that's not really true about the Russians, so it's a strange question to answer.
I realize it might not be one that you can say yes or no.
And there's definitely individual Russian soldiers who they've been fighting this whole time too, and they're good. So it's not like every single Russian is like an idiot, right? Not every single one, but like most of them. And I suspect that on the Russian side, and this is very different to our side, is like I suspect that the competent Russians basically spend most of their time sort of dancing around the new guys and getting them killed. Just kind of that Wagner
Yeah,
position, you know,
yeah,
where like on our side, our competent leaders, and I'm sure that Bachman was doing this. I'm sure that Bachman was at the front of the trench with
yeah.
his men. You know what I mean, leading his guys in, and so. You know, our competent leaders are going to be exposing themselves to harm, and I have a feeling the most competent Russians will not be.
That's another thing I want to ask more about because you're training in um, one of the best brigades in Ukraine and training the best soldiers there. Um, I've heard some Ukrainians say that they're losing the best of this generation. Do you think that that's true?
It's definitely
Yeah.
true. Yeah, it's definitely true. This, you know, it's definitely true, and this is sort of a constant for any war of any time in any place in any century for anything, which is that most people don't want to die.
Yeah.
And therefore you can say most people are cowards. That's how it works, right? Most people are.
Mhm.
And so anybody who there's plenty of people, you know, I talk to them. A lot of Ukrainian civilians are more open to me because I'm a Westerner than they would be to like a Ukrainian soldier. I've heard some pretty incredible stuff. So from talk to some tech guys, tech worker guys, and they were sure that they're too smart and they're too valuable to serve as a soldier in this war, you know. And like that's not true. Like no, that's not true. Our the guys who are fighting, the guys who have the courage to go fight and the technical skills to let's say employ these drones the way that we've been doing them. Even the technical skills of raiding a trench, that is not easy, especially it's not easy to do over and over and over again and not die.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that. And so we have really smart guys. We have really brave guys who are able to see outside themselves and see that there's a big problem in their country and go in and try to address it with no guarantees. And those are the most incredible people in the world.
Yeah.
And so of course we're losing our best generation. And it's the case. It's the case always, you know, we dealt with our own versions of this in America. And every nation and every country and every war has dealt with their own versions of this. Some people are cowards and and they'll survive. Good for them. And then our best, many of them will die. Not everyone,
Yeah.
but many will.
One, you touched on the other fact that it's actually difficult to be a soldier and it takes a lot of intelligence to do the kind of work that is. This is the thing I noticed as well of the foreign fighters that I've worked with here. A lot of them are extraordinarily intelligent people. Maybe not in the sense that like their school grades might not reflect that definitely. But if you talk to them, the way that they can break things down, the way that they talk about their work, um, it's quite impressive. Is that your experience as well? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The look the it's already like let's say you want to go plan a vacation, right? So that's already like pretty anxiety inducing in a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
where are we gonna go? Where are we gonna stay? How are we gonna stay there? What are we gonna how are we gonna travel from this to place? How are we gonna deal with not knowing the language? You know, and so that's just a vacation on that's designed that you're gonna go somewhere like Cancun and it's designed for you to go there, right? But it's still like a bit of a challenge to make that trip, you know. And so, like anybody who's going to come to a war zone with the intent to fight, you know what I mean? With it's way harder than planning that vacation, you know what I mean? And so you can't sleepwalk your way into it, you know. And people who try, they fail, you know what I mean? They don't have they don't have their paperwork together. They don't know how to talk to the border guards, or you know, you got to be brave and intelligent to do this. And I'll just say something about just intelligence and war. I mean, you're fighting other people. You know, whatever your problem is, I'm not to take away from, you know, like people who are developing AI. That's huge problems. You know, engineering problems, they're really big problems. But at the end of the day, a lot of those problems have sort of a static element to them, which is, you know, you can take your time, you can do the math right, and you know your opponent is not dynamically adapting to what you're doing and trying to kill you for it. You know, like when that bridge is getting built, you know, if you don't calculate for the wind, then you fail. You know what I mean? But you've got months to calculate for the wind on that bridge. You know, And when you're shooting somebody long range, you don't have months to calculate the wind
Yeah.
for that shot. They're
Mhm.
they're moving, the wind is moving. They might know the wind better than you. They're going to shoot at you. You're going to shoot at them. Fighting other people is really hard. You know what I mean? You're not better than them. You're a person. They're the same as you. They got two eyes. They got two hands. They got a really crappy government with a crappy leader. But they're and on the field, that's all gone. They don't care about Vladimir Putin. When you're fighting them, it's you and them, right? And their ability to calculate and move and fight and fire, it's the same as yours. You got to be really good to do this.
Yeah, this is not because I think anybody who's come here and made it here a couple of years, they have extraordinary skills, actually. Um, if people are interested in coming to fight in Ukraine or maybe coming to train, what qualifications do you think they need to have?
Yeah. I think I think you I think you had better have some some specialty in something. But I guess there's a lot of answers to this. So I'll just say one thing that's wrong. The not answer, which is if you have no skills and you want to come here and gain the experience, that's a super bad idea.
It's not the place for it. Yeah.
This is not the beginner war, right? This is not McDonald's, right? Your first job here.
Yeah.
This is the five-star restaurant here, right? You had better know what you're doing before you get into the Ukrainian war. Something you better have. If you want to be a medic, you better be bringing something. You better bring medical skills. And that's the other thing is like you see we're sending the Ukrainians all this aid. We're here with a protective volunteer. We're asking for donations. We're asking for stuff.
Yeah.
Ukraine and Ukrainians are highly under-equipped. Their economy is pretty small. It's not big. They don't have the resources to train and equip you. You know what I mean? Generally, that's the idea, which is that if you're coming here, you had better bring something. Maybe it's skills, maybe it's some material with you, whatever it is. But skills is the most important one, because if you're bringing yourself, that's the investment you want to be making here. So you better have something. You better not come in cold and hope to gain experience while you're here. That's kind of a huge waste of everybody's time. And I'll say this, if that's what you want to do, if you want to come in here and learn to fight here, and you don't know how to do it, probably not because anybody like feels a certain way about you, but probably you may end up getting used in a position you do not want to get used in, right? Because your naivety will allow people to take advantage of you and put you in a position you don't want to be in. So I wouldn't do that.
I also agree. I think our number one responsibility here as foreigners is don't be a burden.
Yeah.
More to Ukraine. Like,
that's a great way to put it. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah, and certainly, people without fighting skills can do other things like what I do.
Yeah.
In terms of in terms of the Ukrainians here that you've worked with, what's your overall impression?
Oh, they're amazing. So, well, I'll say it like this. As an American, we have a sort of a deep culture. Our deep culture is, I would say, the cowboy culture. People take their pick. Maybe it's colonial, but I think most people agree on the cowboy, right?
Yeah.
Independent, strong, small government, taking care of your problems with yourself. People sort of like voluntarily banding together to get the outlaws out of town, stuff like that. So the Ukrainians, they're actually the original. They're like the American cowboy from the 17, 1800s, early 1900s. That's actually like a redefinition of an older trope. And so they have their deep culture in Ukraine is the Cossack.
Yeah.
So it's the Cossack, the independent guy. He has a certain haircut and a certain mustache, and he does not have a cowboy hat. But that's the only difference. I mean, rides a horse, takes care of his family, right? Doesn't care for authorities getting in his way, right, of anything. Does the right thing, shows value through character. And so that's the deep culture here in Ukraine. And it really shows when you deal with Ukrainians on an everyday
Mm-hmm.
basis. It really shows that that's who they are.
Mhm.
And so the working with Ukrainians is an absolute joy. I would,
Mhm.
there's like no other country in the world where I would go like risk my life for free, which I've done here in Ukraine,
Mhm.
like I've done it without pay before.
Yeah.
So the I wouldn't do it for anybody else. Like Ukrainians, they're awesome, and they deserve victory. They deserve peace, and everybody should be pulling for them. And they understand. The Ukrainians understand that nobody's going to pull it for them either.
Yeah.
So they're putting in
Mhm.
the blood. They're putting in the lives. They're putting in the effort. They've lost a lot of sons, and they've lost a lot of innocence
Mhm.
through this whole time. So it's not like they're asking for handouts. They are putting in everything they've got into this, and so if they're putting in everything, it's easy for me to put in everything.
Yeah.
If they're good people, it's really easy for me to stand with them, and they are. They're great people, and they put in everything.
Yeah. My experience matches yours as well because I've had a lot of Ukrainian students, and so and the university I teach at, I for a long time thought that we must have lots of Ukrainian students at the university. We did it. We had a very small group, but I teach argumentation, and they were all kind of signing up to do that because they assert themselves. Like if they have something to say or something, like they do not back down. I really admired that. I was like,
Very brave.
that's a rare but awesome thing to be able to do, especially as a young person. And you see that everywhere here, actually. Um, I want to touch more on the fact, they've lost a lot of people here. And I think recently it's been said that every Ukrainian now can name either a friend or family member that's been killed in the war. Um, do you think that they have the stamina to keep going as long as it takes, given the losses?
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. I definitely think they do.
Mhm.
Yeah, the I don't have anything to add to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Me too.
believe.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah. Um, when you started training the Third Assault Brigade, um, what do you think is the biggest difference between training them versus training with the U.S. military, other than just that you're working with different levels of equipment?
Yeah. Well, this unit started in 2022,
Mhm.
like many of our units. Not, I wouldn't say most of our units, it might be most at this point, but a
Mhm.
lot of our units started in 2022.
Yeah.
That means we're 2 years old, less than 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
That's young for a
Mhm.
military unit. And we're really good. We've done a lot in a short
Mhm.
amount of time. We have a lot of really senior leaders, so it's not like we're starting from zero.
Mhm.
A lot of our higher echelon leaders have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And but I guess it's like this. We're in the fight right now.
Yeah.
So even when I'm teaching, the students I'm teaching might have been in a battle like 2 days before,
Mhm.
right? And so like I'm teaching them on like their like brief vacation that they
Yeah.
get. And as soon as they're done with my class, they're going back into the battle, right?
Mhm.
And so the big difference is we don't have the time. We don't necessarily have the resourcing that we would usually have for
Mhm.
training Americans. Um, we may not even have the schedule worked out before we start a class. And so
Mhm.
we're kind of flying off the cuff to get this done. And additionally, we do not have a permanent training facility anywhere, right? Because if we install a permanent training facility anywhere, it's going to get bombed like over and over.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so every class we do is in a new area, in a new place with new safety requirements, with new problems. Maybe this one has a field we're going to light on fire if we shoot at it, or maybe this one has a village that we're going to hit people if we
Mhm.
shoot the wrong direction, stuff like that. So um, and I mean, sometimes these things are quite inside the view range of Russian drones on the front line. Like we're teaching
Mhm.
near the front line all the time. And yeah, just the time, space, resourcing, scheduling, none of that's usually available, and we've got to do it anyway.
So I've heard from basically everybody fighting now that there's more drones than ever before, and
Yeah.
drones are a huge threat. Are they a threat for you in training as well?
Yeah, yeah. So we like one of our classes uh, was right next to we were doing it right next to where there was a Iskander strike against one of our HIMARS,
Mhm.
the first one that went down. We were teaching like really close to that. If the Russian drones had figured out where we were instead of that,
Mhm.
could have been targeted. So Typically, the Russians don't want to target small groups of personnel, and so we mitigate a lot of the classes we do. We mitigate that threat by not being all collected into one spot, stuff like that. So we're moving tactically even while training.
Yeah, I mean, this is Russia will hit anywhere, civilians, and it's not like they're going to respect.
Yeah, amazingly, by the way, on that point, I don't want to say this, but I kind of wish the Russians would target the military more often. They target Ukrainian civilians so much, and it's we're laughing because of how absurd it is. By the way, it's so ridiculous that the Russians target civilians, especially with long range strike. They target civilians more than they target the Ukrainian military.
Since I've been in Ukraine, I've been in the vicinity of some strikes, and sometimes I get people in the front line texting me to be like, "Are you okay?" This seems backwards. I should be asking you, but really, it's valid because it is dangerous to be a civilian here. They will hit anywhere. In terms of drones, so one thing we did some fundraising recently for shotguns for Third Assault. Everybody's now asking for these. What are you guys doing with the shotguns?
We're shooting drones.
Yeah,
we're shooting drones, and so the drones are. By the way, I actually I've been recovering from a surgery in the hospital for last month, and while I was recovering last week, I was in a drone course.
Yeah,
just FPV drone course, just to learn about these things. I'm not gonna fly an FPV drone in combat. There's better guys for that.
They're hard to fly, actually.
Yeah, they're hard to fly. Yeah, I can fly one. But anyway, but I wanted to learn about them, and this was like a combat course. They taught all about the signals and how they have jamming and all this other stuff. Fact is that jamming doesn't work against these drones. So there are so many ways around jamming that as long as you have a moderately prepared drone team, then you're going to get around the jamming. So the thought was initially, and this is what I was thinking before I went to this course, is that that jamming was the solution. And it's just increasingly not, because there's too many ways around it. So now if you can't jam it, with a signals weapon, then all you're left with is with a physical weapon, right? And there's really, we have anti-air weapons for large platforms, but we don't have really small anti-air platforms for these drones. And the shotguns sort of work. So they at least instead of a signal, at least it's a physical piece of metal flying to hit the drone. So there's that. Hitting the drone with your regular rifle, it's actually possible, especially if you're a decent shot and the drone operator is not ready for it, right? If they're going at a constant rate of speed, stuff like that, you can get away with it. But it's pretty unusual to be able to do that. And so the shotgun just gives you a slightly better chance under the same circumstances, which is that the drone operator is sort of moving at he's not exactly aware of you, and you can kind of blindside him, but you have to be close enough, and that drone can't be flying directly at you, because if it is and you knock it out, you're still going to get blown up by that drone, by its trajectory. If it's coming straight at you, it'll still travel and then hit you. So it's just one of the available off-the-shelf things that works, but it only sort of works, and so it's, even those are a little dicey. But outside of that, there's not much other than putting fishing nets all over the place in a defensive position. Let's say, right? That's another way around this stuff, but that takes time, and when you're on the front line, everybody's watching everything. So if you're running around on the trees putting up nets, the Russians are going to see you and start sending artillery shells at you. Somebody needs to build some specialty systems for this, by the way. I know one that I won't say what it is, because I don't want the intel to leak out there, but I've got, everybody's got some stupid idea, so I've got a stupid idea for how to get rid of these.
I wanted to ask about that, because I have a lot of people reaching out to me with all kinds of ideas of what could do for drones. I've heard people trying to invent certain different forms of grenade launchers to launch at them. There's things that will shoot nets, just all kinds of stuff. Is that something that actually might be useful for people to spend their time on, or is that just?
No, we didn't do. People need to spend their time on.
Yeah.
And they need, and then we need to get that stuff to Ukraine. But at some point, we need to get that stuff to our like American law enforcement and
Yeah.
Secret Service and all that stuff. Everybody needs that stuff. So
Okay.
so it's if somebody figures that out, it's huge. You need standoff, right? So you need some standoff to be able to engage. You need speed to be able to catch that drone. So it can't be a slow projectile like the net. I've seen the net guns and like that's slow, man. That's,
Yeah.
how are you going to hit it with that? So you need a physical destruction system for those drones.
Mhm.
And a lot of Western thinkers right now, the military analysts think that you can jam your way out of these things. There are too many ways around the jamming. You cannot jam your way out of this. And especially if the size of your target is too big, you know what I mean? If you're protecting one thing, like you might, and you have unlimited power because you plugged into an outlet, then okay, you probably guarantee a jam out for sure.
Yeah.
But like, what if, what if the size of your force is this big? You know, what if you have logistics lines going all the way from here to there? Can't protect everything with the jamming, and even, and you need really you need better jammers than what we carry, normally. Like let's say, like I was in Iraq, Afghanistan, we'd have a Duke V3 system on every vehicle, right? So my veterans will know what a Duke V3 is, right? These drones will get past the Duke V3 for sure, right? They'll be able to dive in from a Duke V3 and they'll be able to blow up an MRAP or whatever, right? So we're not ready for this.
Yeah, this is match what everybody has told me. The rules, the game has changed. So
Yeah.
the war has changed. Do you think that these challenges can be overcome on Ukraine's side? Are they going to be able to find solutions for the drones, find new ways to handle this?
Well, what we're doing right now is we're getting better at the new thing faster. And so basically our spear, is if the drones of that spear, what you're talking about is like, how do we build the shield to stop that spear? So right now we're doing sort of an offensive defense sort of thing. We're just making the biggest spear possible with these drones. We're just getting better and better, right?
Yeah.
A huge spear now. It's up in the air whether or not the Russians will be able to catch up at this point. I'm sure they will be able to. It's not like unscalable technology for them at all. And so as far as like the defense against the drones, I don't know. I know that really the ability to create those things, especially electronic warfare systems, we just don't have it, right? So we do not have a chip manufacturer like pushing silicon into boards here in Ukraine. So if we're getting solutions, it's got to be from some sort of off the shelf or some thing that we're getting from another sophisticated industry from somewhere else, So like we don't really have, on the electronic side, we don't have the ability to sort of to affect it. And that's why we're asking for shotguns.
Yeah, at least that's one one thing that can be bought, and actually not that expensive to get them here in Ukraine too. It's not too bad. For people who do want to support Ukraine in the war effort, or support specifically the Third Assault Brigade, support what you're doing, what are the things that they can focus on doing?
So definitely advanced equipment, so night vision technology, advanced drone equipment. So like, let's say even now we really need like thermal and night vision cameras for drones because we're doing so much more stuff at night. And if we can run, if a typical drone for us costs $400 to blow up somebody during the day, we can do it at night as well. It's just it costs $800. You know what I mean? But it's still a huge capability for us, and enables to do reconnaissance while it's also lethal munition. So those are big ones, and especially just high-end stuff, car repairs, computers, these sort of like advanced technologies. I think that's what we really need a lot of help with. I'm not a big fan of asking for like socks and stuff. I know some people, we have socks. I think we have clothes. And gear, always need gear. There's a lot of gear here, but a lot of it's not good. So I've got a helmet that's like way too heavy, for example, right now. That's like everybody. And then I think the biggest thing for me is staying involved. Even if you're donating like small amount, that means that like you pay attention to what's happening here. And people need to pay attention to what's happening here. I mean, for everybody who's complaining about what are we doing with the weapons or what are we doing with the money that we get, we are sending the weapons at high speed into Russian Russian tanks, into Russian equipment, into Russian soldiers. We're doing it a lot. We are really, really efficient at using the weapons that we're getting from the West. We are dominating with these weapons. And so we need to keep sending them, right? Because just because you sent us 10,000 doesn't mean that we didn't fire 10,000 at the Russians, and didn't mean we didn't destroy like untold millions of dollars worth of Russian equipment in the process. We're using the stuff really well. And so when you give us new arrows, we're firing them at the enemy. So we need more. We shoot a lot. The enemy shoots a lot at us. So people who even donate small amounts to like stay involved, like I'm not saying don't buy socks, but do buy us socks for sure.
Yeah.
And stay involved, and really by staying involved, you're more aware and you're more informed of like what the decisions on the political side that need to be made. Because as important as the donation industry is, that DoD, Department of Defense support, that Department of State support, that U.S. government support is really important for us as well. And it's really important that policymakers at the high political echelons know that like Ukrainians' bravery and Ukrainians' fight for their freedom resonates with Americans, and it does. Like we need their support too.
Yeah, certainly. Even if you can't donate, you can vote.
Yeah,
exactly. Do you think the U.S. is doing enough to help Ukraine?
Well, that's hard to say because we're doing more than everybody else. We're doing more than we've ever done for anybody else ever. But the fact, and some people take those two metrics, like that the Americans have really done more than any single other entity to help Ukraine. That's true. The Americans have done more for Ukraine than they've ever done for any other country in like our history, right? And that's also true. And here's the thing is, Ukraine is huge, and Russia is huge. This is the second largest army in the world. We've never like tried to take on a sort of tasks this big. So Ukraine is 40, usually 50 million people, down to 40 million people. So the size of California or Texas, right? And so it's a really big place. It's a really big front line. It's a really big war. This is the biggest war since the Korean War, right? And I think it's quickly gonna get bigger than that. Might be already. So by how many casualties there are per year. So this is a huge problem. That's why. Are we doing enough? It's like sort of yes, but sort of no. We're doing enough. We're doing enough in relative terms, but we're to like what we usually do, but we're not doing enough in relative terms to the scope of the problem. And like the fact that we were really slow on some aid, especially like jets. It's how long has this taken to release the F-16? Like, why were we even arguing about this in the first place? I think the Ukrainians have shown their ability to absorb artillery systems, tank systems, advanced anti-air systems from all these countries. Like we every piece of equipment we get in Ukraine, it has a different like GPS datum system that you're going to use. It has different software, it's a different language, it's got different compatibility with other systems, and we use it anyway. We quickly absorb it, figure out how it works, and we employ it. We employ it fast, and we employ it effectively. And so like nobody needs to hold anything back. No, there's no concern that the Ukrainians aren't competent enough to use something. They're super competent. There's no concern that we're going to waste it. Like we're not like selling Abrams to Egypt or something. I don't know. We're using it. We really need this stuff, and we're really using it. We're using a ton of it. So, and we're getting great effects out of it. I mean, if you look at the amount of damage we've done to the Russian military, it's unbelievable how many Russian tanks, how much Russian assets we've destroyed like in this place, and that's all going to make the world a safer place. Like if we're just getting rid of these weapons, and we're reducing Russia's military capabilities, it's great. It's great for everybody.
Yeah, definitely, and they're doing it with the old equipment too. Imagine if they had even more.
I wish.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about, so the American military equipment that has been sent here, I think there's a lot of questions of basically of what has the US sent? Because people, the way it's, the way it's presented is like it's a certain amount of $1 billion in aid, but the reality is that is actually physical goods, or what are some of those things that?
Well, I'll say, so I'm a Bradley Master Parent, so I'll talk about
Yeah.
the Bradleys.
Mhm.
I got to go check out 47th Bradleys
Mhm.
a few months ago, and I was actually like pretty happy about
Mhm.
what I saw. I was really worried that we were going to send like this because we said we were sending this ODS Operation Desert Storm Bradley to
Yeah.
Ukraine. Now, I've messed with those, in the U.S. Army. They're terrible, um, and uh, and they were the ODS Bradley, but I got to get inside and see exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And they had given us the upgraded thermal imager, so um, it can definitely see a dude easily, 8 kilometers, depending on temperature, even further than that, right?
Mhm.
And so we gave them, it was missing some stuff. It was missing some electronics and stuff that we want to keep to ourselves, our communications equipment. I understood that,
Mhm.
but it was covered in the correct reactive armor. It was tow launcher worked. We didn't. The tow ammunition was pretty bad. It was like 30% failure rate. So the stuff that was some old tows. That's not good, right?
Mhm.
But they sent us plenty of 25 millimeter to go with them.
Mhm.
The they were good. They were good Bradleys. And so and after seeing that, I suspect that a lot of the stuff we're sending is sufficient.
Yeah.
It's pretty good stuff. It's not the latest greatest stuff. Um, I wish we would send more electronic warfare systems for
Mhm.
sure. Just stuff like the Duke V3, right? Which
Mhm.
like I said, the Duke V3 is going to stop a moderately well prepared drone team, but there's plenty of not well prepared drone teams that we can, you can get rid of like 50% of the drones out of the sky from electronic warfare.
We have had we've gotten EW systems for some teams, and some of them have said this is what kept me alive.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
it can work. Some people say that didn't work at all.
It
It's
depends on
all,
it depends on the drone operator. Actually, it depends how good
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But it's confusing too. Like this is a whole new kind of thing. I want to ask a little bit just more of individually on the effects on your life here. And so you've talked about how sometimes here you have not been paid, or even if you are getting paid, it's not a high salary.
Yeah, no.
What how do you financially afford staying here and doing what you do, given what you also have to spend on your own equipment?
Yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Ukrainian paycheck is pretty low.
Mhm.
The whole point for me is that I'm not trying to make anything back right now. The your
Yeah.
organization, Protect the Volunteer, definitely keeps me above water. You know what I mean? Like just able to operate every month. So that's the way that your organization does the fundraising. It's really huge for me. And I'm really grateful for my donors, Ethan, Drew. I just got two sort of new ones from Andres, and I just got a new one, Charlie.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Mr. Wilson.
I'm
I have to. No,
I'm not sure the name, but
he just joined. He just joined me. I haven't got you. Oh, let me just make sure because I don't want to get this wrong. I'm terrible with names in general, by the way. So it's about time I got. Because this new guy seems like he's pretty good on global politics, or not global politics, just he's a deep thinker,
nice.
big thinker. Yeah, yeah. Jason, thank you, Jason. So thanks again. Anyway, it's that's a big part of being able to afford the gas and the food and the stuff that I need every month. But no, I'm definitely not making any money off this right now. Sure, I I'm investing in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Honestly, like that's where I'm trying to that's where I'm trying to come out on top of this financially, is that I'm investing in Ukraine. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to be successful. And I think that there's going to be a lot of good military industry in the future from this country, and I want to be a part of that. So, but in the moment, no, it's the no the dailies are rough. Yeah.
Yeah. What about being away from home for so long?
Yeah, that's well, I've done 4 deployments with the U.S. Army before, and those where I kind of figured out how to do that.
Yeah.
In this case, I'm not putting myself on a arbitrary time limit of like a 1 year deployment or something like that. I want to win this, you know,
Yeah.
so that's how long I'm here for is
Mhm.
to win this. So my family's well prepared. I'm not married, so I don't have kids to deal with or anything like that. So that's a big factor. If I had wife and kids, that's like I don't think I couldn't be here. That's not how that works. So,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
big thing to leave.
yeah.
Yeah.
So but yeah, my sisters, my mom, my dad, that
Mhm.
they all are all used to this. Yeah.
Does Ukraine feel like home now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Yeah. Plenty of friends. I've got a lot of friends. So yeah, no, I love Ukraine. That's definitely feels like home.
Yeah, no, you speak some Ukrainian
Так,
as well.
я працюю в моєму мовою українською. Так.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna end with one final question here of what if you could go back in time and do this all again, would you still do everything the same way of coming to Ukraine to fight and train and do exactly?
Yeah, for sure.
Even though you've been injured, even though you've
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would do it. Yeah, I'd do it. I mean, sure, like some details I might change.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. But basically the point of this, the point of coming over here to another country is that when you come to a new country, maybe it's Afghanistan, maybe it's Iraq, you kind of need to understand that like the people who live here, they've been living here, like that this is their country.
Yeah.
You know, this is their country. They're going to make the choices about what direction they want to take their country in, what way they want to do their military, stuff like that. And you can only help. You can only help them. Right? If you wanted to say how everything was going to be, you know, you go do that back home in your home. You know what I mean? I think it was obvious that we made so many mistakes in our Middle Eastern wars by not listening to
The local people,
the people
yeah.
who, you know, the Afghans, for instance, and what they actually wanted, you know what I mean? Or, and maybe what they wanted was horrendous, you know, but you still got to like listen to them and try and figure out like how to meet their needs. So in Ukraine's case, like what they want is not horrendous. What they want is amazing. And so it's really easy to just come over here and support that, you know, that's what I do. I don't talk down to that, you know, listening to that. And so like, yeah, would I do it the same? Well, I did it the way that they wanted it done. I talked to the embassy. I came how they wanted to. I joined the units they wanted me to join. That's how it is.
I think you might be the first person I've talked to who actually went the embassy route at the beginning. Most other people just kind of showed up here.
So that surprises me because that's what you're supposed,
to do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that goes back to experience and trust. And I think you ought to if you're going to go work for a foreign government, you ought to trust them.
Yeah.
I think that's important. So anyway, you know, definitely I've seen many mistakes from the Ukrainians. You know, they had a young army, a young officer corps that the guys with experience, you know, they fought 2014, the Donbass War. That's intelligence-based operation. It's not a conventional military operation. So there's a lot of growing up to do with leaders in the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian government. But generally, I definitely trust the Ukrainian leaders, and that's how I started this deployment, and how I'm going to continue.
That's a great spot to end it here. And I'll just add, if people do want to support you, they can match up with you through our website, match directly with you. We also fundraise for Third Assault Brigade directly on the site. Right now, all those donations are going to shotguns. We previously had them go to scopes. I think, you know, it goes to whatever you guys need, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for talking to us. This is really fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you for your support. And please follow Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini.